and gentlemen, boys and girls, turtle ages, you are listening live to the first ever edition of Championship Rings here on this Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Me, Brandon Lewis, the host of the Branch World Podcast, along with Josh Ungar, the host of the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel, will go head to head every single week, debating all things NFL, NBA, and all things sports. Welcome to Championship Rings, and hello to you, Mr. Josh Ungar.
What is up, buddy?
You know, everything is going well. I cannot wait. This show is going to be for all of you. So if you are listening live to us on our YouTube channel, we will be there at Championship Rings every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also go on social media. You can check us out. You can follow us on Twitter at Rings Champion, Instagram at Rings Champion, and Facebook at Rings Champion 216. We're, of course, also in collaboration with the one and only Voltage Live. And Josh, usually on this show, we're going to talk a lot of NFL, a lot of college football, a lot of professional wrestling. But with this week being the startup of the NFL season, we kind of figured, let's just jump right into it because there's going to be so much NFL to cover. There's going to be a lot of topics each week that we're not going to be able to get to in our 1 hour timetable. So we just thought today, why not go balls to the walls, NFL, all things week one.
Makes sense. I mean, for God's sakes, we have the Lions and Chiefs kicking it off on Thursday. It feels like it's been forever since the NFL season ended. I'm sure you don't want to talk about how the season ended, which, yeah, we're not even going to talk about it.
February 12, 2023 was the last NFL game played featuring the runner-up Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and the team that will kick off week one of the NFL season, that being the Kansas City Chiefs, who, of course, will be hosting the Detroit Lions. And under our first ever debate topic here on Championship Rings, the question really is, Lions Chiefs, game one of 275 regular season games. Who wins? Lions Chiefs.
Well, here's the thing. Travis Kelce might not play because reports came out that he hyperextended his knee. Chris Jones is holding out, one of the big-time defensive players for the Chiefs, but they still have Patrick Mahomes. But when you look at the Lions, think about what the NFL has done with the Detroit Lions. Next year's draft, I guess is how you would say it, is in Detroit. They are the season opening game rather than the Bengals or the Bills against the Chiefs or the Eagles for that matter. And, not everybody's saying, oh, I'm actually looking forward to the Lions playing on Thanksgiving this year. So think about the change in reputation that the Lions are going through. You agree with me on that part?
And by the way, this all started after a 1-6 start last year that they had, and they ended up going 7-3 down the stretch to finish 8-9, a very successful 8-9. And I recall on the Brandon's World Podcast last year, it was week 7. Like I said, the Lions started off the season 1-6. You know what I was saying on the Brandon's World Podcast? I was calling for Dan Campbell's job. I was saying, if you're 1-6, and I love Dan Campbell, I love beating off the kneecaps, I'd run for a brick wall for the head coach of the Detroit Lions. But I was saying, if you're 1-6, come on, Dan, I love you. You're a rah-rah guy, but you got to win games. And that incredible turnaround led mostly by their offense, led by offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who is a stud. The Lions retained him. He's going to be an NFL head coach in the next year or two. I firmly believe that. He helped elevate Jared Goff to his level of play last year. And just Amon-Ra St. Brown, when Jameson Williams came back. When they had TJ Hawkinson, they obviously had Jamal Williams last year with DeAndre Swift, so a completely new running back room. But their offensive line is one of the tops in the game. Goff is, good to great when he has protection. And the Lions are a very, dare I say, sexy pick this year. There's some people that have them winning 11, 12 games. I'm not quite there, but as we've talked about now with this news in Kansas City, this has turned into a very interesting game.
It, I think it was going to be a very interesting game either way. Um, Granted, the last time the Chiefs hosted a season opening game, it was against the Texans, and we thought, oh, this is going to be a great game given what happened in the playoffs the season before. And Kansas City just said, no, we're going to blow you out, and we're going to blow you out fairly easily. So that was disappointing. I bet a lot of people turned that game off at halftime because the Chiefs were winning so badly. So I'm hoping that is not the case this time around. Now, we all know that Patrick Mahomes is going to be in the MVP discussion again for the Chiefs. It's obvious. But the question for me is more about Jared Goff. You brought him up in your very nice soliloquy, and you talked about how Ben Johnson brought out the best in him and how he can be good to great. But think about this for a minute. What did Detroit do in the draft? Not in the first round, but I think it was in the third or fourth round. I don't remember exactly. But my point is, they went and drafted Hendon Hooker, the quarterback out of the University of Tennessee. If you go back and watch what Hendon Hooker did before he had his season-ending injury, he was probably the front runner to win the Heisman Trophy. I mean, you saw what he did against Alabama. You saw what he did against Florida before the Florida Gators fell off. I get it, but still, at the time, it was a big game. I could go through a number of other games. Hendon Hooker showed that he is capable of being an NFL quarterback. So I'm curious, if Jared Goff struggles at all during the season, which I think he will, what kind of leash does he have? Does he get pulled right away, and does Hendon Hooker get put into the fire? Or do they say, nope, Jared Goff, we're going to leave you out there, and we're going to let Hendon Hooker develop a little more? Do you get what I mean?
So I completely disagree with you in terms of that you think Goff is going to struggle, because I think Jared Goff is going to have a great to elite year. I do think that they took a chance on Hendon Hooker. And by the way, I liked Hendon Hooker coming out. I compared him a lot to Anthony Richardson, who I'm very excited to watch this weekend with the Colts against Jacksonville. But I think Jared Goff is going to have an incredible year. Their schedule, just from a weather standpoint, is very favorable. Outside of Baltimore week 7 and Chicago week 14, those are the only two games that I see on the schedule that, they're going to be in any danger prone weather wise where Goff could struggle, because the only real time in Jared Goff's career that he has struggled has been when he's outdoors in minus 40-degree weather. Of course, he's a kid from California. He's played great in the Californias. He's played great indoors when he was a Hawaiian in the dome, whether it's away or home. His struggles have been outdoors on the East Coast in the wind in the city. Outside of that, as I mentioned, he was great to end the year last year. I think they're going to build on that success. I think the Hendon Hooker pick was almost a, just in case, maybe even if Goff does well, maybe there's a little bit more upside with Hooker because he's a little bit more mobile. But at the end of the day, I think Jared Goff's going to have a great year, and I don't see Hendon Hooker, barring an injury, I do not see him taking the field this season.
So let me just clarify something. I wasn't trying to say that I expect Jared Goff to struggle.
That's what you literally said. You said, I expect Goff to struggle.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. I was asking a rhetorical question, which I'm known for. I was saying, what if Jared Goff struggles?
And then you said, which I think he will.
Okay, whatever. Because, think about it. We know, has he shown that he can be consistently good? No!
Year and the year before, yes. Since he's been in Detroit, he has been an above average, if not a top 10 quarterback. Look it up.
Ay. But I feel like if you
There's
put
not to like about Jared Goff since he's been in Detroit. He's been a winner. They've had the last year, the year before that, when they went 6-10, they had a good offense. They couldn't stop anybody, just like last year. They couldn't stop anybody. They were putting up 30 points a game.
I'll tell you who I think the real X factor is going to be for the Detroit Lions this season. The running back they selected out of Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, because they don't have to use him as a running back. They can use him as a hybrid. Why not use him as a wide receiver? Use him as a receiver coming out of the backfield. Like, that's going to bring a very different element to their offense that I think they were missing last year. Yes, they had Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, but I don't feel like they had that receiving threat out of the backfield.
Well, Swift was supposed to be the receiving threat, and then all he did was get hurt. So I agree with you in that sense, though I do think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to have a huge year this year for the Detroit Lions. If anybody drafted them in fantasy football, I think you'll be very proud of that. I like that pick by Gibbs. I'm very interested to see then how they use David Montgomery, because from what I heard, it sounds like you said, Gibbs is going to be lined up a wide receiver. Maybe they do the two-back pony set. There's a lot of different formations. And again, Ben Johnson, who I think is an absolute stud of an OC, and proved it last year with that tremendous game plan that he had week 18 at Green Bay to go in there when the Lions could have made the playoffs if it wasn't for Baker Mayfield selling against the Seahawks. But nonetheless, the Lions had nothing to play for, and they went in there and eliminated Green Bay from playoff contention, and they are now building momentum heading into next year.
So in that sense, I think they did have something to play for in that Week 18 game. Yes, they were eliminated from the playoffs themselves, but they were still playing to keep the Packers out of the playoffs.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it, right? You're in the last week of the season. You really want to make the playoffs. Going in, you have to win. You have to get some help. But the help you need occurs before your game. I don't care if it's your division rival or not. There is that natural letdown when you find out, oh my God, we worked all this time to get there. Because, like I said, they went on that incredible streak, in the middle of the season where I believe one of their only losses was against Pittsburgh in that crazy game where, Mason Rudolph started and it was a downpour and that was a mess of a game. But
something like that. But,
Detroit is coming, and I think this offensive line, defensive line battle is going to be really interesting in this game. I want to bring something up real quickly to you. I'm going to put this on the screen right now. This is per Adam Schefter. Tweeted out at 5:24 p.m. tonight, so just before we got on the air. Schefter says, and I quote, after a test today, the Chiefs believe that Travis Kelce's ACL is intact. You see there's a typo there for intact. There is inflammation in the knee. They will test it again Wednesday to determine his availability for Thursday night. The report, though, does note that Kelce is unlikely to play. In that scenario, Josh, if Travis Kelce does not go for Kansas City, I believe, and the line right now is at 6.5, 6 points, whatever you can get it. If you're a bettor, go bet on the Detroit Lions right now to at least cover that spread. Because if Kelce does not play, Kansas City's offense is going to look completely different. And I do not think they're going to be able to match up now with Chris Jones being out. The Lions are going to be able to run the football, ball control. And when you don't have that offensive weapon on the side of the ball for Kansas City, their receiving core is not great, to put it lightly. And I don't care. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if you're Josh Allen. I don't care if you're Joe Burrow. I don't care if you're Jalen Hurts. All of the quarterbacks need good to great receivers to throw to. And if Mahomes is working with the likes of Montez, Scantling, and Sky Moore, couldn't separate from a pillowcase last year. He's working with these guys to go out there and catch passes against a Lions team that's going to be motivated. I think this is a very bad matchup for Kansas City.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I will say this. We were saying the same thing about Patrick Mahomes last year after they traded Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. Granted, they still had Travis Kelce, so I'll give you that one. I will give you that. But we were unsure about the Chiefs' wide receiving core because who did they have? They had Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, and some of the other guys he mentioned, and yet they still won the Super Bowl. But your overall point is still valid, but Mahomes is going to come up with
The
something.
difference between having Kelsey and not having Kelsey in that offense, I believe, is tremendous. Name me a game, because I don't think there is one. Has Mahomes ever played a game without Travis Kelsey? The answer is no. He had played games without Tyreek Hill even when Tyreek Hill was there. Tyreek Hill had been injured. They still had Kelsey and they still produced. That offense goes through Kelsey. And it always has been, no matter if they add Tyreek Hill, because the whole thing is set up by the tight end. Now, they do have some pretty good backup tight ends, but none at the level of Travis Kelsey, who will take two defenders. And now the point is, without Kelsey, your defensive strategy is different if you're the Lions. Now you don't have to put a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson on Kelsey. Now you don't have to play as much zone. Now you can literally play, in my opinion, straight up 22 man, which is cover 2 man, and basically say to those wide receivers, if you beat us, because we know you're not great at separation, if you beat us, you're going to win the game. And Andy Reid is one of the most clever offensive minds in the business. Andy Reid is great. We know he's great in week 1. He's undefeated in week 1 as the Chiefs head coach. We know he's great in short week. We know he's great off a bye. We know all that. If they add Kelsey, I pick the Chiefs to win this game by about a touchdown. But I think Travis Kelsey is literally worth that for Kansas City, which is why, in my opinion, if he does not play, the Lions are going to win this game. It may be a little bit more low scoring than people think. It may be a 20-17 game as opposed to a 30-27 game. But I think the Lions are going to ball control the hell out of the ball, quick short passes for Jared Goff, run the ball with Gibbs and Montgomery, keep Mahomes off the field, and force him to throw to these young and inexperienced receivers.
So you think we'll get a little bit of a repeat of last year's opening game where, yeah, Buffalo blew out the Rams, but like you think the visiting team, in this case the Lions, will ruin banner raising night?
Yes, if Kelsey does not play. If he even suits up, I think it's a big difference. I think Kansas City could pull it out. The difference in last year's game was Buffalo's defensive line obviously overwhelmed the Rams' offensive line. I don't think that's going to happen this time around. I think it's going to be more bully ball. And this Chris Jones, I think the Chiefs all think, he's going to be fine. He's going to be back midseason. We're still going to make the playoffs, and I understand that. But for this game specifically, it is a big loss when you have one of the best offensive lines in the league in the Detroit Lions. Again, very clever offensive, staff with Campbell and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff there. Like, I think the Lions could very easily move the ball here and put up a lot of points.
The real question for me is who else besides Armon St. Brown is going to step up as a wide receiver for the Lions? Yeah. That's what I'm wondering. Like, we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's more of a hybrid. I wouldn't call him a definitive wide receiver. So that's the big unknown element for me in this game. Like, if let's say the Chiefs double Amon St. Brown, who's Jared Goff going to go to? That's what I want to know.
Marvin Jones, it's Josh Reynolds. I mean, Jameson Williams is obviously not there because of the suspension. So it's it's Josh Reynolds who I like. It's Marvin Jones I think is okay. I know they have a nice young tight end to replace T.J. Hockenson. So there's weapons that are there, but it's going to be a run the football like game.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. But I still think, even without Travis Kelce, Mahomes will somehow, some way find a way to still win this game.
I'll tell you what, if Patrick Mahomes does pull this out, because the Lions' defense is not great. That's the thing. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. There's not a lot of notable names. They did drop the linebacker, the off-ball linebacker.
Jack Campbell.
Jack Campbell, yeah, which I mean, I did not understand that pick. I don't understand drafting off ball linebackers in the first round in today's day and age in NFL when it's all about quarterback, receivers, offensive line, defensive line, and the Lions needed more defensive help. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting game. I do think it turns more intrigue because I think Travis Kelsey is just such a weapon that you have to keep your eye on as a defense. That again, I just think it makes the Lions' job a whole lot easier. But if Mahomes does pull this off, by the way, he's dealing with two new tackles, both the left tackle and the right tackle. If
That is true.
if Kansas City pulls this off, testament to them because we know again the great coaching of Andy Reid. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, the Lions are going to walk away here with a victory.
All right.
All right, well, moving on. Moving on, Josh. We just talked about the opening game of the season between the Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. The question here is going to be who is going to play in the last game of the NFL season, that being Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas.
Well, first of all, I think the trend of the home team playing in their own stadium for the Super Bowl is going to end this season. Granted, it didn't plan out last year because the Arizona Cardinals last year were just straight up garbage. But you know what I mean, because the previous two seasons, Tampa Bay did it, the Rams did it. So the trend was still there. But I think the trend ends this season because the Raiders are not getting to the Super Bowl. Give me a break. I don't trust Josh McDaniels and Jimmy Garoppolo. He's mid. Shout out to the AEW World Champion MJF. But I do think that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, and the Cincinnati Bengals are getting to the Super Bowl this year. They will knock off the Kansas City Chiefs in the jungle in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, that's right. I think the Bengals are going to have home field advantage in the AFC. As for the NFC, the only two real viable options are San Francisco and Philadelphia. I don't trust Dallas as a realistic Super Bowl contender. And I would love to put Seattle in there, but not quite yet. So it's either San Francisco or Philadelphia. I need to see more from Brock Purdy because defenses are going to study up on him. We know what San Francisco has on offense, but look at what Jalen Hurts did last year with A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders was not there, I don't think.
Miles Sanders was there last year.
Oh, my bad. That's right. He signed with the Panthers this offseason. I got mixed up. But still, think about what Jalen Hurts did with that group of skill position players, and he's running it back with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. Miles Sanders went off to Carolina, but you know the Eagles are still going to have a good running game. So I think it's going to be Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals taking on Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles.
This may be a first and only right here on Championship Rings because believe it or not, Josh,
I agree
with almost everything you said. Here's the difference. I also have Cincinnati taking on my Fly Eagles Fly, Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, Nevada, Allegiant Stadium. However, I think Cincinnati goes on the road in the AFC Championship game. They go back to Arrowhead for the third straight year. Chiefs, Bengals, they each have one win apiece in the AFC Championship. Cincinnati gets a late stop on Kansas City, and they will move on to the Super Bowl. On the NFC side, this is where I disagree with you a little bit. I think the Philadelphia Eagles will be hosting the NFC Championship game.
Okay, so we agree there.
But I do not think it will be San Francisco.
Oh, don't say it.
You're going to have an all NFC East, NFC Championship game.
You trust Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy.
The Dallas Cowboys will beat the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round.
Hell no!
They will beat them because they will finally get over the hump by running the football. Brock Purdy will turn back into a pumpkin, and Dallas will come to Philadelphia for the third time, which will presumably be a rematch. I have Dallas winning in Dallas, Philly winning in Philly in the regular season. So it will be the third time Dallas and Philly will go at it. I think Philadelphia will win a close game and ultimately get back to the Super Bowl. This is what I wanted to bring up because this is what you ultimately neglected about my team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I agree with you about the offense. Obviously, we know Jalen Hurts is a stud. I think new offensive coordinator Brian Johnson is going to do a great job with him. Called plays in college, was the quarterback coach the last 2 years in Philly. I do not suspect a huge drop-off there, leaving Shane Steichen obviously going to Indianapolis. However, what you failed to talk about was the Eagles' defensive line, the best defensive line in football. I don't want to hear
the
about
University
the Jets.
of Georgia.
I don't want to hear about the Jets. I don't want to hear about the Browns. I don't want to hear about any other team's defensive line because the Philadelphia Eagles have by far the best defensive line in football. Let's just start here. Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Hassan Reddick. That's the first four. That is your front four.
Hey, don't forget about the two guys you drafted this year, Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith.
How about the second wave? How about let's go, I don't know. How about Brandon Graham? How about Jalen Carter? How about Milton Williams? How about Nolan Smith?
There you go.
How about Derek Barnett? And what about this secondary? Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avante Maddox, Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks. It is a deep and loaded secondary. I think Reed Blankenship in his first full starting year at safety is going to have a breakout year, in my opinion. Linebacker, it would have been weak outside of Nakobe Dean, but Nakobe Dean is a tackling machine. And this Eagles defense under new defensive coordinator Sean Diazzi is going to blitz more. They're going to get after the quarterback even more than what they did last year when they broke the record last year for most sacks in a regular season. This Eagles team is ferocious, and the defensive line is what is going to win them the Super Bowl against the Cincinnati Bengals. As great as the Bengals offense is, and we saw it, they almost pulled it off against the Rams 2 years ago. One of the Eagles defensive linemen will make a play, and at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the last two Super Bowl losers we both predict will meet up this year, and I am predicting that the Philadelphia Eagles will raise the banner in Las Vegas.
All right. Let me ask you this, though. The Eagles' defense has had a lot of losses this offseason. You had, Brian Edwards, for example, went to the Bears. TJ Edwards, excuse me. You had CJ Gardner-Johnson. He left to join the Detroit Lions. Your defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, went to become the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm so sorry for him. But do you think those losses could hurt your defense at all?
Let me address the one. I think Nakobe Dean's going to fill in for TJ Edwards just fine. I like TJ Edwards as a player, but Nakobe Dean was sitting behind him last year, sitting and waiting. And when Nakobe Dean got limited action, he was a tackling machine, like I previously just said. So I think we'll be fine there. The one position that I'm a little bit worried about is safety. We are going to have Tremaine Edmonds and Reed Blankenship back there. Pretty much a new safety unit because Marcus Epps, who you did not mention, went to the Raiders in free agency. So we do have two new safeties, but Reed Blankenship was in the system. I think Tremaine Edmonds will fill in just fine. And as for Jonathan Gannon, as grateful as I am for as good of a defensive coordinator as he was leading up to the Super Bowl, there are Eagles coaches who actually will believe Jonathan Gannon through the game against Kansas City because Gannon lied about being interviewed for the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job. Gannon was not focused on the Super Bowl. Gannon was getting ready for the Arizona job without telling anybody he was getting ready for the Arizona job. And so, for that matter, I say good riddance, Jonathan Gannon. We will beat you down week 17, New Year's Day, when you come to Philadelphia and take on the Eagles, or it'll probably be a 1-15 Arizona Cardinal football team at that point.
Fair enough. First of all, thanks for correcting me about TJ Edwards. And secondly, I know I didn't mention all the players that left your defense. Those were just the first names that came to mind. But I will tell you this. Why is it that the Eagles lost their offensive coordinator to a head coaching position, and they lost their defensive coordinator to a head coaching position?
Because we had a lot of success and we have really good coaches and really good talent.
But here's the thing. Didn't the Chiefs win the Super Bowl?
Okay.
How come they didn't? How come Eric Bieniemy didn't get a head coach position? How come their defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, get a head coaching position? That's what I'm confused about.
Well, the Spagnuolo issue is because he's a former head coach and he is also a older coach in the league. People want young, bright, whether it's offensive or defensive minds, preferably offensive minds. That's why Indy went after Shane Steichen. I was actually surprised Gannon got a job. Apparently, he had relationships with people in Arizona, and I actually think that's the only reason why he got that job. Steichen was high priced because he's a young, bright offensive mind that did great things with Justin Herbert as well as Jalen Hurts. And people knew that he was calling the plays. The reason why nobody went after Eric Bieniemy is because nobody gave him success, because people like myself believe that Andy Reid was actually calling that offense. Well, we're going to see what Bieniemy does this year with Sam Howell in Washington. I think they'll be okay, not great. I think there's more of a chance Bieniemy actually becomes the head coach there and they get rid of Ron Rivera at the end of the season. But if you want to know the reason, that's the reason.
Okay, fair enough. Do you get where my confusion is coming from, though?
No, I don't. It's very simple. There's nothing confusing about it.
It's just that, like, the Eagles lost the Super Bowl, and yet their head coach or their offensive.
By the way, Steichen was pretty much already hired before the Super Bowl, and so was Gannon.
Okay, fair enough.
So it had nothing on the outcome of the game. And Spagnuolo's never getting a head coaching job again. And Bieniemy, some people think there's other factors, and we won't dive into that right now. But, he's got to prove himself this year with Washington.
Fair enough. I just thought it was an interesting facet to the equation.
Speaking of Super Bowls, Josh, we are going to come up with our top 5 dark horse Super Bowl contenders. These are not necessarily teams that are going to, go to the Super Bowl per se, but they may have a chance to. And so I'm going to let you sort of dive into your 5 first, and then I'll respond with my 5. Your 5, top 5, and in any order, really. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. Dark horse Super Bowl contenders.
Okay, first of all, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I love what the Ravens did over the offseason. Bringing in Odell Beckham Jr., hiring Todd Monken as their offensive coordinator, drafting Zay Flowers. They are adding weapons around Lamar Jackson. So I got to go with the Baltimore Ravens. Next up, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. First of all, they should win the AFC South fairly easily because Indianapolis and Houston are both still rebuilding teams. And
I don't know about that.
Okay. And yes, Tennessee went out and got DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't trust Ryan Tannehill.
That I agree with you.
As quarterback. So I got Baltimore and Jacksonville. I want to include Miami, but I don't trust Tua to stay healthy, so I can't do it. So instead, I'm going to go to the NFC South, and I'm going to go to Derek Carr, Dennis Allen, and the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr, he's good. This is a good reset for him. A good change in environment, getting out of getting away from the Raiders, and they have Michael Thomas now. They're going to get not Eric, Alvin Kamara back. I liked Chris Olave as a rookie, and I think he's going to continue to get better. But look at what they have in that defense. They have one of the better defenses in the league. I'm not saying it's at the level of the Eagles' defense, so don't like yell at me about that. I'm just
I'm
saying
sitting here waiting patiently.
I'm just saying New Orleans has one of the better defenses in the league. So I got Baltimore, Jacksonville, New Orleans. Next up, I'm going to the Pacific Northwest. Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Pete Carroll. Yeah, I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks. First of all, I think they're going to overtake San Francisco in the NFC West, and they're going to host a playoff game at Lumen Field. Good luck going into Seattle in the playoffs and coming out with a W. I wish you the best of luck. So there's that. And then for my fifth one, God, for the fifth one, it's a toss up because with the AFC, I don't know if I can really trust Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. I want to say Buffalo, but is their window already closed? Like, it could be. Kenny Pickett's not quite there, so I can't say Pittsburgh. And don't even get me started with the Raiders or the Chargers, because the Chargers still have Brandon Staley, and the Chargers are going to find ways to charge her. So, no. And the Patriots, just no. And then you look at the NFC East, the Giants, no, I don't trust Daniel Jones. Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders, not yet. Not now. No. Detroit's the most realistic option, but something just doesn't feel quite right. I don't trust Jordan Love with Green Bay. Kirk Cousins, no. Justin Fields, Arizona, no. San Francisco's, I'm going to go with San Francisco here.
As a dark horse.
Actually, no. Correction. Fine, I'll just throw Dallas in there. There you go.
You know what, Mr. Auger, you better come prepared, because I am ready to unleash, because it is my turn. Now, when I think of dark horse candidates, I'm thinking of, playoff teams to maybe some teams that may not make the playoffs, teams that could overachieve and potentially get to the Super Bowl. So I'm not talking about Buffalo because people expect them. I'm not talking about Philly. I'm not talking about Kansas City. I'm not talking about, San Francisco. People are picking them, in some cases to go to the Super Bowl. I'm talking about teams that are like borderline playoff teams that could jump up to that Super Bowl window. Here we go. And again, in no particular order. There's some I agree with and some I vehemently disagree with.
Okay.
Number one, in my opinion, you said you don't trust him because of his health, and I completely understand that. But if he's healthy, absolutely, the Miami Dolphins are Super Bowl contenders. If you could guarantee me to it, Tagovailoa would play 17 games this season. The Dolphins would have overtaken the Bills, in my opinion, in the AFC East. The addition of Vic Fangio and when Jalen Ramsey gets back, which I was still tossing up between Miami and Buffalo, who's going to win the division. The only reason why I went with Buffalo is because Ramsey's going to be out more than half the year. So I think the edge goes a little bit to Buffalo in that department. But when you got Tyreek Hill, when you got Jalen Waddle, and when you got Mike McDaniel pulling the strings, you are in the Super Bowl window, because Tua Tagovailoa was actually an MVP candidate last year when he was healthy after he looked like a bust under Brian Flores.
Okay, go ahead. I'll respond after you're done.
Everything about the Baltimore Ravens, I completely agree with you with. I've been on the bandwagon for them. I think they're going to stay healthy this year. I think they're going to win 11 games. I think Lamar Jackson doesn't win MVP, but I think he gets back to his MVP-like form the year he did win it. I think Baltimore's going to have a really good year. I keep saying it. They were the only team last year for the first 10 games of the year that had a double-digit lead in every single game. Their defense let 3 of those go, but when the Ravens are on the field, they have special power, and I think Todd Monken's a great addition at OC.
Okay.
Next team, the Los Angeles Chargers. Because of Kellen Moore, the addition as the offensive coordinator. Now, I don't trust Brandon Staley. Who can trust Brandon Staley? My own dog couldn't even trust Brandon Staley.
He should have been fired after that playoff game.
But we got Justin Herbert. We got Mike Williams. We got Austin Eckler. You got Keenan Allen. You got the kid Johnson, who you drafted in the first round, who I really like. They have all the weapons offensively. Defensively, obviously, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James. They add the talent, and if the coaching can put it together, they could be absolutely Super Bowl contenders. The next team on my list, Unger, this is going to make you feel good. I'm actually going to go with the Cleveland Browns.
Say what?
Listen. Is there a world out there where Deshaun Watson gets completely back to his Houston Texans way? Yes, there is. Do the Browns have a good to great offensive line? Yes, they do. Do they have a good running game? Yes. Do they have good receivers? Yes. Do they have a great pass rush? Yes. Do they have good corners? Yes. Do they have good safeties? Yes. The Browns check all of the boxes except for coaching, and you're not quite sure about the quarterback. If Watson gets back to his Houston level, Deshaun Watson, there's a world out there where the Browns could absolutely make a Super Bowl run. And I truly believe that, even in the tough division they're in.
Interesting.
Now, for my last team, I didn't want to go all AFC, so I had to pick an NFC team. I'm not picking Philly. I'm not picking San Francisco. I'm not picking Dallas, because those were the top 3 teams favorited in the NFC. So, you know what? After I've been listening to you about this one team and I've been thinking about it, I'll actually go with the Seattle Seahawks.
There you go.
And listen, people are a little bit too high on the Saints, I think. I don't trust Dennis Allen at all. I don't see a world where Dennis Allen is a good enough head coach. He's the second worst head coach of all time next to Hugh Jackson. There is literally no proof that he can be an NFL head coach. Statistically, look it up. He's only won like 10 games his whole NFL career. He is not a great head coach. He wasn't a good head coach in Vegas. He wouldn't have. Now, I do agree. Derek Carr's got the best defense of his career. The division is weak, though. I really do like Carolina. I think Carolina is going to be sneaky good. And then
I also think Atlanta is going to be sneaky good.
I don't, because I don't trust Desmond Ridder. I like Bryce Young already, and I haven't even seen it. I like Bryce Young more than I do Desmond Ridder, and I like Frank Reich more than I like Arthur Smith. So I know you saw my NFL predictions. Probably, I'm guessing I have Carolina winning the South this year. They are my surprise division winner. You got to go with one every year. For me, it's Carolina. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender at all, but I don't trust New Orleans. Listen, back to Seattle real quick. Is there a world where Geno Smith repeats what he did last year and even better? Yes. And when you add Jackson Smith and Jigba to that offense and the kid Witherspoon they drafted out of Illinois, Seattle is really good. I still don't think they have as much talent on their team as San Francisco. And I think for the regular season, and Seattle, by the way, has always been outcoached by San Francisco these last couple of years. I think the head-to-head is what doomed Seattle, and I don't think they're going to have enough to win the division. But is there a world out there they do? Absolutely, I could see it.
Okay, so I got a question for you. Why did you not include Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars?
The reason is because I think that there is more high upside for a team like the Browns or Baltimore because they have better defenses. Jacksonville, to me, is not a great defense. I think they're going to have to go outshoot people. And I also think they're going to be hurt by the fact that their division is relatively weak. And I like Indy. I think they're going to be better than people think. I like Houston. I think Houston's going to win some games this year. I think they added a lot of talent in free agency. I don't think they're going to be terrible. And Tennessee, I don't love their roster at all, but Mike Vrabel's a really good coach.
I'll give him that, yes.
Like, I think that there's more upside to Lamar Jackson could have a better year. Herbert, Deshaun Watson, even. Like, I think those rosters are better than Jacksonville's roster, even though I'll take Trevor Lawrence over Lamar Jackson, over Deshaun Watson. And to me, it's really a toss up with him and Herbert. But Jacksonville would have been my fifth, but I didn't want to go all AFC. So I went with Seattle just because in the NFC so weak and the AFC so tough.
Here's something interesting. Neither of us mentioned Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Neither of us did.
You're right. And I was thinking about it. There's a world out there. I have the Jets. I don't know where you have the Jets finishing. I have them in third. I have them sneaking into the wild card at 10 wins. I have them as the last seed. But I have them in third in the division behind Buffalo and Miami. Could they win the division? Yes. But even if they do, I think that they're a 1-and-out playoff team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team year one.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender year one. I think they're being a little too overhyped. I mean, I get it. They probably would have made the playoffs last year if they got decent quarterback play. I get that. I get what they have, at the skill position with guys like Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. They just added Dalvin Cook. I get it. But how do we know Aaron Rodgers isn't going to revert back to his old form and become the diva that we all know him to be?
The biggest thing I'm worried about with the Jets is their offensive line. Their offensive line to me is a mess. We've seen it in Hard Knocks. It's not very good. And Robert Saleh, if you've been watching any of Hard Knocks, Robert Saleh is a terrible motivator. I would not want to play for Robert Saleh personally if I was head coach. I don't like him that much. I think it's a very defensive-minded, rigid. Again, it's an offensive-minded game. But for that matter, I do think that there's a lot of expectations on the Jets.
Yes, I agree with you. I hear what you're saying about Miami. I really, really do. I love Tyreek Hill. I love Jalen Waddle. Their wide receivers are great. And Mike McDaniel has proven himself to be a very good head coach. At times he's been great. I wouldn't call him one of the best head coaches in the NFL. Not quite ready to say that, but let me say it like this. He has the potential to get to that level. He definitely does. But the inconsistency of Tua's health, I can't get that out of my head.
I'll put it this way when I look at Miami and Jacksonville, between the two. I see Miami as their personnel is right. It just all depends on Tua. Jacksonville's the opposite. I like their quarterback. I don't love all of their personnel. I think, by the way, Calvin Ridley's going to have a great year receiver. I love their offense. Of Josh Allen, the defensive end, and Walker, the number one pick, they don't have a lot of talent on defense. I think Miami's got a lot more talent on defense, especially in the secondary. And I think, really, again, it all depends on Tua's health.
Yes. In terms of the Chargers, you are right. They have weapons galore. Keenan Allen, who I think is I wouldn't say he's a top 5 wide receiver, but would you be willing to say Keenan Allen is a top 10 wide receiver? Is that fair?
It's debatable. It's not quite fair. It's debatable. We'd have to go over the list. But, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill.
Fair.
Those are the 4. I like Jalen Waddle over Keenan Allen personally. So that's 5 right there off the top of my head. I kind of like, A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith, I think, and T. Higgins are right there, 7, 8. So, and I know there's got to be DK Metcalf. I know there's got to be
Lamb.
CD. He's right there with Keenan. I kind of like Mike Williamson then more than Keenan Allen. So,
okay, but overall, you're at least willing to.
He's 15. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's a very good receiver.
Okay, but But are you at least willing to include Keenan Allen in the discussion for top 10?
In the
Not saying,
discussion, he'd be there at 10. If he's
okay,
there for me, he's there at 10.
okay, so I hear, so you're willing to play him in the discussion. I'm all right with that.
In the discussion, real quick here, because we got to move on to our last topic.
Go, okay, got it. It's Brandon Staley. I just don't trust him as head coach. And the Chargers have not shown me that they know how to get out of their own way. We saw it last year against the Jaguars.
Well, speaking of the Chargers, there is a very interesting game week 1 between the Chargers and the Dolphins. It's one of my top NFL games to watch during week 1 of the NFL season. I'll quickly give you guys my other personal top games to watch this weekend. Obviously, Thursday night, make sure you watch Lions and Chiefs. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. In the 1 o'clock window, the two games I would especially pay close attention to, Bengals, Browns. For all you bettors out there right now, the line is Cincinnati minus 2.5. Joe Burrow has not played at all in the preseason. He struggled last year, week 1, after not playing in the preseason. He's dealing with a calf injury. He has struggled against the Browns throughout his career. I think that's a very easy Browns bet. Take the points. I also am very intrigued by Jacksonville at Indianapolis. I want to see how Anthony Richardson plays. I want to see how that Shane Steichen offense goes up against Doug Peterson and the Jags. That's going to be a very entertaining game. In the 4 o'clock window, I already said it, Dolphins, Chargers. Two teams that could be potential Super Bowl contenders, also two teams that can miss the playoffs, just depending on health and coaching. And the final game on my list is going to be Monday night. Bills, Jets. It's a must watch to see what Aaron Rodgers and those Jets look like in MetLife Stadium. And it will be interesting to see what Josh Allen and that Bills offense looks like coming off the disappointing end of the year they had. They get Tre'Davious White back, but they're still missing Von Miller on that defensive line, which could be pivotal in this game.
All right, so I agree with you about Lions Chiefs. I think it is a very intriguing game, especially if Travis Kelce does not play, given that Chris Jones is also not going to play. In terms of the 1 o'clock window, we talked about these two teams earlier. Bryce Young, Desmond Ridder. I'm looking at Carolina.
They were on my list too. They were going to be 6. I couldn't get them in there, but
okay. I really like what the Atlanta Falcons are doing. I could see them possibly winning this division, although I like New Orleans a little more. That's why I put the Saints in my Super Bowl contenders, or dark horse Super Bowl contenders, excuse me. And I want to see what Bryce Young looks like under Frank Reich as his head coach. So that game is intriguing. And then I am going to the Steel City, San Francisco against Pittsburgh. You have the two best, arguably the two best defensive players in the league going at it in this game. Nick Bosa against TJ Watt.
I have to interrupt you. Are we sure Nick Bosa is going to play?
Ooh, good question. That's a fair argument. I'll give you that one. But nonetheless, this game is still really interesting because you've got all these weapons for San Francisco. You've got George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. For Pittsburgh, you've got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, who I think is coming on as one of the better tight ends in the NFL. And I don't think this is going to be a game for like high scoring. I think this is going to be like a 24-17 type of game, or maybe more closer like 21-16. And then for the 4 o'clock window, I agree with you about the Dolphins-Chargers game. But then I'm going to the Windy City. How about this to start the season? Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. What happens if Jordan Love goes into Chicago and beats the Bears?
I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked.
Okay.
I don't think Jordan Love's going to work at all. I watched him lose to my alma mater, Kent State University in college. I can't get over it.
Okay. But And then what's the narrative? Think about the narrative if that were to happen where Jordan Love beats the Bears.
Oh, in Chicago, they're losing their mind.
Right. And think about the narrative if Justin Fields goes out and beats the Packers. That's why I'm looking at that game, because of the narratives that will come out of this game based on who wins and who loses. Um, and then, like I said, I agree with you about Miami and LA. And then I have to agree with you again about Buffalo and New York. First of all, this game's on 9/11, so that's sentimental and emotional right there. But like, is the window closed for the Buffalo Bills? I think it's pretty close to being closed. I really do. Um, and can Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets live up to the hype that has been built up all around them this season? I don't know.
Listen, I don't hate your picks, and I don't think you hate my picks. We have a very intriguing week one. There's not a lot of games I disagree with you on. The only one I'd say is I kind of have a hot take. I think Pittsburgh's going to handle San Francisco easily. I,
Interesting.
I think San Francisco struggles week one. Remember last year when they had the rainstorm game? It was Trey Lance against Chicago, how bad they looked. Now they have to go West Coast to East Coast. Brock Purdy, this will be his first live game action since the NFC Championship game injury. Pittsburgh does not lose when TJ Watt's on the field, pretty much. They're like 50-20 when he plays, and they're 1-10 without him. I think that San Francisco, they're going to be better as the year goes on. We know that. Week one, I think it's a very difficult ask. I think Pittsburgh, I think it's low scoring. I agree, but I think it's like 21-7. I think
Okay.
San Francisco really struggles to move the ball. I could be wrong. I just think it's going to be tough sledding.
I I can see where you're coming from with that. I totally can. I just think there's a really interesting like aspect to this game that I'm like, I want to watch this. But I want to point something out super quick. We both went through our top games. You know what game we didn't mention? The Sunday night game.
Well, I think Dallas is going to roll the Giants. I have no belief in the Giants at all. I know it's a divisional game. By the way, Dak is 10-0 in his last 10 games against the Giants, whether it's been Eli Manning or Daniel Jones. So there is that. We have 3 minutes to post time. Josh, is there any game that you strongly disagree with me on that you'd like to put a little wager on? Friendly wager?
Nah, I don't really have anything. Um, Arizona, Washington, meh.
My survival pool of the week this week is Washington. I'll throw that out there.
I mean, I I think Washington's going to win that game fairly easily. I like Sam Howell. I'll tell you what, though. I was really upset with when the Washington drafted Jahan Dotson because I wanted the Browns to somehow either trade up and get him or hope that Jahan Dotson fell to them.
Well, I think the Browns have found their Jahan Dotson and Elijah Moore. I think he's going to have a really great year.
Okay, but you touched on the Browns earlier with their running game. Here's my concern: they let Kareem Hunt go. When Nick Chubb has to come out of the game? Who's going to be that backup running back?
Give it to Jerome Ford or give it to any other back because the running back is a human turnstile position. It is a running back by committee. You didn't need Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I told you to trade Nick Chubb last year. I told you to trade Kareem Hunt last year. Told you didn't need both of them. You needed to keep one of them, and they did.
Okay. That's just an interesting aspect to me. And I'm so happy we got rid of Joe Woods as the defensive coordinator because he was horrible. I have no idea what New Orleans was smoking when they decided to hire him.
Jim Schwartz is going to be a great addition. Well, we got 1 minute left here in the debut episode of Championship Ranks. Thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, we are in collaboration with the one and only Voltage Live. Follow us on social media at Twitter at Ranks Champion, Instagram at Ranks Champion, Facebook, you can like us at Ranks Champion 216. Once again, we will be here with you every single Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Today, we did a lot of NFL. I'm sure next week we'll get into some college football as well as NFL, maybe some wrestling. You can tell we don't have a lot of time. 1 hour is a lot to get through, but we just appreciate you guys being here and listening to the show.
See.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate it. Have a good week. This has been Championship Rings, episode number 2. We'll be coming at you next Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will see you then. Peace.
A salute to you.